Hello, welcome. Welcome. Awesome. Thank you so much for hopping on today, Friday in the middle of the day. So, I'm going to go ahead and get started while you all come in here. Welcome to this space. Megan, hello. Awesome. Hi, Vimal. All right, so this is the last live of a series I've been doing over this past month. Hi! And I've been doing this series for the launch of my program. I started it last year. It's called Temple of Shakti. And so each one of these lives, I'm kind of going through some of the themes that we're exploring in this much longer, deeper program. And Megan, who's here with us right now, was part of it last year. So the theme today is honestly something really excited for me to talk about. One of the big inspirations for my work is this kind of bridging of traditional spiritual principles, especially those coming from the traditions of India and Tantra specifically, and yoga, like classical yoga, and bridging these into this kind of modern movement of bringing the sacred into our lives. And especially, and I shared a post I wrote many years ago at the inception of Shakti Temple Arts the other day about how one of my really massive passions in the work that I do, coming in from Nepal, that's awesome, beautiful. So I always love to know where you're coming in from. So if you do want to share that, please let me know. I forget to ask that sometimes, but that is what's so exciting about doing this work online, is that we really get to connect from all around the world, which once upon a time wasn't possible. So where was I going with that? So one of my passions and one of the reasons that Shakti Temple Arts was birthed is that for many, centuries, if not thousands of years, women were not able to be part of a lot of these spiritual systems. And going back even further, women were actually the initiatrixes. They held some of these teachings as teachers, practitioners, and priestesses. And I feel like there's this modern reclamation of that. But what can happen in the modern reclamation is we actually lose some of the connection to the traditional wisdom in that process. So my big passion and what Shakti Temple Arts is about and what Temple of Shakti is about is this bridging between those worlds. So today's topic is very much about that, as we're exploring Dharma and the path of the Priestess. And so we're going to unpack what that means. But I first want to just share that this being the last live, I love doing them on Fridays. I say this every time. But for those of you who might not have tuned in with me before, Friday is traditionally in the tantric system, this is the day of Devi, who is the goddess. She has many faces and forms. We can celebrate her on this day. And it's also the day of Venus. So Venus is bringing in those Venusian qualities of, our senses, embodiment, the richness of the tapestry of life that we experience through the senses and through our consciousness, which is the union of Shiva and Shakti, right? So that's a whole other thing to unpack, and I've been unpacking that as we go. Belmont Shore in California, yes. Awesome. I'm just up here in Northern California, just an hour north of the Bay Area. So, coming to you from the Redwoods. So, today's topic is what I've been doing is kind of going through the journey of Temple of Shakti over these lives. And so we are now on the final month of Temple of Shakti, exploring that theme, which is all about Dharma and our divine purpose. But I want to distill this a little further because the concept of Dharma is not limited to our life purpose as in our career, as in our, our dream career specifically. It's so much bigger than that. And what can happen is awesome, welcome from London, beautiful. Must be late over there, huh? So we are taking, then I saw we have Portugal here as well. So we are taking these concepts, what can happen as East meets West, and these beautiful spiritual principles come to meet the Western world, is they can get overly simplified. And there's a power in the larger container of what these things actually mean that I think is so important that we rest back into, while also integrating where we're at in the modern world, the movements that need to take place, the evolution that needs to take place within humanity. Humanity, in my view, and I think probably this is aligned with many of you who are tuning in here, but humanity is an experiment and an experience in the evolution of consciousness. It is in and through these bodies that we awaken, that we offer our unique gifts into this world. So when we're looking at Dharma in the most traditional context, like meaning the context that this word and concept came out of, right? So Dharma is a Sanskrit word, and it's really, it's hard to even translate it from Sanskrit to English accurately. But I'm going to try. So Dharma is about right relationship, first and foremost. It's about living our everyday lives in accordance with spiritual principles. And these aren't dogmatic spiritual principles. These are like the core essence of our potential of humanity, which are kindness, generosity, being in harmony with the whole. So if we're acting in Dharma, we're not acting in a selfish way. We are not doing things strictly for ourselves. We are doing things in accordance with the whole. And I like to think of this as walking the beauty way, because in Dharma, we're doing what needs to be done for that larger sense. Right? So one of the famous texts that's taught in yoga schools all over the world is the Bhagavad Gita. And, I'm not so well versed in the Bhagavad Gita because I tend to be really deep in the tantric side of things, and that's not a text we use as much. But if you're in the yoga world, it's a very important text, and it's all about this concept of Dharma, where Arjuna is having this conversation with Krishna meaning that divine consciousness, that larger container, right? And his struggle is around the morality of going to battle to protect his kingdom, and this battle. He's in this struggle because, a battle is not necessarily a good thing, right? Lives will be lost and all of this, but put in the larger context, it was actually the right thing to do. So Dharma is not always a totally straightforward thing, but it is always resting in that larger field of awareness where we are acting in accordance to the best possible outcome for harmony with the whole, right? So this is what Dharma is. If we're talking about Dharma in relation to the path of the priestess, and I'm speaking of it in that term here because of Temple of Shakti, and there we really are orienting towards the feminine in positions of spiritual empowerment, being teachers, being leaders, being priestesses, which is really a role of servitude when we really break down what the concept of a priestess is. But I want to share, because I know there are some men here with us today, that this also applies to the path of the priest. And what I see as the highest embodiment, like what is the priest and priestess? It's one who acts as a gatekeeper between the sacred and everyday life, right? So again, if we think of Dharma, Dharma is trying to bring in more of that sense of the sacred, that ability to see from that wider picture and act in accordance with that wider picture. And when we are walking in Dharma, and Dharma is a practice, right? It's not like, oh, I'm all of a sudden, I live according to Dharma and I'm perfect all the time. That's good luck. It's a practice, but it's a principle that we bring in until we can walk more and more in that place of grace and communion with the divine, right? And live in accordance. So even the words that we speak, the way that we embody, the way that we are in our relationships, and that relationship extends from the self, our relationship to ourself, our relationship to others, and our relationship to the divine, which connects. It's that larger field awareness that connects everything else. So the priest or priestess is in service to that. Dharma is an integral part of being a priest or priestess. And, we can think of, there are ordained priests and priestesses. If you go to India, for example, or even if you go to church, there's like the priest. You go to India, they're the priests in the temples, they're ordained. But I don't personally think you have to be ordained to use this as an orientation in your life. It really just means a path of service. Are you serving something greater? Is that part of your Dharma in this lifetime, to be connected to that path of right relationship, to be weaving beauty into this web? Beauty is automatically going to be connected to those higher spiritual principles. Tantra is a path of beauty. Dharma is walking the beauty way. The priest or priestess serves that beauty. Beauty is love. Beauty is harmony. Beauty is right relationship. Beauty is kindness and generosity. And we start to embody these principles more and more and more as we come to understand Dharma and we come to walk the path of the priest or priestess, right? And so that's really what it is, And I think in this day and age, there can be, we can just so easily get lost in kind of the image. And so what can happen between East and West is, in the West, where we have to decondition this, we don't have to decondition it, but there can be this like rugged individualism where we kind of take things and they start to become about the self, but not about the larger self, if that makes sense, right? Where it can be, we can grab onto that idea of the priest or priestess and it becomes like something that builds us up rather than this place of like, I want to be in service to something greater. At the same time, in the East, that individual can get lost and end up being martyred or sacrificed to that larger picture. So one of my passions is where these two different ways of being, different lenses on the spiritual path and how that relates to our everyday lives. I love to come into the middle where it's like, we are important. Our unique essence, our unique expression is here as a ray of the divine that has a purpose. So if we are bringing that concept of Dharma into our life purpose, which Dharma is such a big container, that is part of it. It's just not just that, right? Which can get confused in the West. So it's bigger than that, but our Dharma is part of that. And so how do we take our life path, which is something that sings to our hearts, which is unique to us, which is our one very personal gift that we are offering to make more beauty in the whole, right? It's like the flower of our heart. And that flower of our heart combined with the flower of each other's hearts creates this beautiful garden on planet Earth when we are aligned with those principles. So Dharma acts as a spiritual container of checks and balances for our Dharma and our life purpose. Are we moving ethically? Are we moving with kindness? Are we moving with generosity? Are we moving with reciprocity? And that includes ourselves. And And so we want to, like I said, we want to find this middle ground where it's like we're not martyring ourselves to the collective. We're an important, integral piece of that, but we're also not letting these concepts start to build up this smaller sense of self that, just by nature of our conditioning in the West can be imbued with a bit of selfishness, right? So we want to strip down all the layers, all the dogmas, and come into just that simplicity of what is beautiful right now. What action or word or kindness or even boundary can I have that is in right relationship with that greater picture, right? So for instance, if I'm over giving, there's not beauty in that, because at the end of the day, I end up depleted, right? So it includes the nourishment of the self, the nourishment of the other, the nourishment of the divine in our everyday lives. So where else do I want to go with that? So we start to bring in these ideas, and I personally think that to orient, if we are one who has that pull in the heart of the modern mystic to be connected with the divine, to bring in a sense of the sacredness to this world, the horizontal plane. It's like we're kind of grabbing from the vertical plane and beaming it out into the horizontal plane, that it can be really helpful to orient towards the idea of the priestess or the priest, right? Because we are in service to that. But that is the key word there, that the priestess or the priest is in service to that something greater. They become a transmitter of that. They become a gateway for that. And the goal is more one of listening than the speaking comes after the listening. The action comes after the listening, this kind of thing, because we're constantly checking in with that concept of Dharma or right relationship. So I think that these concepts, we don't want to grab them in this, the ego loves to grab this kind of stuff. So we want to be careful that we're not grabbing it with the ego, but that we are using them as an inspiration and as a compass on our path. Like, am I acting, if I want to claim that title of the priestess, am I acting in accordance with this service to something greater? If I want to live my Dharma, is my Dharma my personal, purpose and path, and perhaps that's your career? Is that in alignment with these spiritual principles? Am I being ethical in the way that my business, like for instance, I'll use an example in my line of work. So much of my work comes out of a very specific system that has a very specific home on planet Earth, India. And so I'm from another culture. How can I come in and have that right relationship where everything that I've got is benefiting others, but also how can I benefit the peoples and the culture and the land that came from, right? So we can look at these greater webs of relationship and connection, because that's what Dharma is about. And that is what Tantra is about. So in even the traditional sense, right? So in Neo, or what I like to call Western Tantra, or the Western view of it, there is an accuracy there that it is all about relationship. But it's not as simplified as it's being presented there. It's more complex. It's a bigger, we're always looking at that bigger lens when it comes to spirituality and spiritual practice. So if there are any questions, I'd love to invite you to share any questions, any comments, any I love hearing different views. I always want these to be more, I wish I could see your faces. That's why I like Zoom better, but to be more interactive. So if you have any thing that you'd like to share around this concept, or how this has maybe showed up in your life, I would love for you to share that in the comments before I close, because then I won't see your comments anymore. So how this relates to Temple of Shakti, to the program that is starting on Monday. Oh my God. is that we are going on a journey through all these different aspects. So Tantra is the overarching lens, along with some Taoist practice. So we're going to have kind of these two mirrors that we're looking at things within, different aspects of the life. And we're starting at the foundation. We start with the first month where we're establishing sacred space and self-care practices, because it does start with the self, right? But it doesn't stop there. So we have to lay that solid foundation. My teacher said something that really struck a chord with me one time, and it's that we have to have a strong sense of self before we start to dissolve the self. And the only reason, why do we dissolve the self on the spiritual path? So that we can make room for that larger self. And it's not so much. So if something dissolves, like let's say we have sugar dissolving in tea. I'm thinking of chai because I'm a chai addict. I love chai. So if sugar dissolves into tea, does the sugar disappear? No. It just becomes a part of the tea, of the ambrosia. But it becomes something even greater. So when we think of dissolving the self in a spiritual journey, I think some of us can be like, why would I want to do that? Like, I like myself. I love this about myself or that about the self. Yeah, but it's not that we're actually giving that up. We're just recognizing that that's actually a limitation when it comes to the larger capacity that we have. And so we allow ourselves to be dissolved like that sugar in that delicious chai, so that we can become a part of that greater self. So, but we have to have a strong sense of self, because that can cause, and this is the reason these traditions have such a strong container and step-by-step process. And one of the reasons we don't want to just take this and that and kind of twist things around, because there's an intelligence in that process. Because if we don't have that strong sense of self and we start trying to, peel off the layers and face our traumas and get rid of these patterns, like these patterns are there for a reason. So we want to lay the foundation in this space of deep self-love, of deep tending, clarifying our external and internal space so that we can set a really solid ground for the rest of the journey. So our first month, we're really focusing on creating that grounds, creating that very, very solid foundation. And again, we're going to come at that from the lens of classical Tantra and also bringing in some of the Taoist principles there. From there, because this course is and I've had so many requests, there's a co-ed course coming, I promise it's coming. This one is specifically for those who identify as women, because of some of the material that we're going into. So in month 2, we're exploring. Thank you so much for all the hearts. I love it. I love knowing you're here with me. So month 2, we're going into sacred cycles and enlightened sensuality. And this is where I spoke this in the beginning, but some of you came in later. And I've been sharing this in some posts where I feel like we have to bring back in the feminine embodied experience to spiritual paths, because it got, traditionally it did end up getting pushed to the side, feared even, discredited. And there is something so valuable about the experiences that are lived through a female body, through our menstrual cycle, through our larger life cycle, through our sensuality and sexuality. There are keys here to our awakening. So our whole second month is about tuning into this. And those cycles are not just for women, though. They're for all of us. And the reason for that is that there's a desperate need on our planet at this point for us to move in accordance with the cycles. What does this remind me of? Oh, Dharma. So Dharma is moving in accordance with those cycles, with our nature, and not nature in that like base kind of instinctual way, but that larger nature where, we look to nature to teach us about harmony, about why is nature so beautiful and peaceful? because in her natural state, she is harmonious. She makes no mistakes. There is an incredible intelligence there. And a lot of our pain and suffering and disconnect comes from separating ourselves from that. So it doesn't matter if we're men or women, we have to reconnect with that. And we kind of have a little, step up in female bodies because our menstrual cycle directly connects us to those cycles. So we get a little bit of an easier, we have a little bit of a shortcut. Everything is the microcosm of the macrocosm. It's all spiral, it's all cyclical. And we can take comfort in that, especially we're moving towards our third module where we face the shadow, where we face our fear of death, essentially. When we come to understand the cyclical nature of everything, which we can literally observe all around us, we come to understand that life is also cyclical. Death is not necessarily an ending. It's the bottom of a cycle before a new cycle begins. So there's a question in here. When am I planning to do a co-ed? I have to wait until my brain is so full with preparing for this group that once I'm through this portal, I'll be able to think into that or feel into that more. But there have been so many requests, and I hear you. So it's coming. I do have one, it's evergreen, so that's not as fun. You don't get to interact with me, but I do have an evergreen course for all genders in my virtual temple. You can find that at the link in my bio. So it's a good starting point until I get my act together. Okay, so next we go into month 3 is shadow dancing and unbridled radiance. So all of these are setting more and more of a foundation, and it's like concentric rings that are getting wider and wider and wider. And while I'm sharing with you here the what, the how is inside the course. The practices that we're going to be doing, the concepts that we're going to be exploring, and the personal aspect, because this is a group mentorship process. So we're really it's interactive. You're not just receiving teachings from me. We're excavating and looking at these places in ourself that are, I almost said in the way, but I don't feel like they are in the way. They're actually showing us the way. So in module 3 or month 3, we're looking at shadow dancing and unbridled radiance. And the whole idea here is that for us to know wholeness, we have to be able to embrace the full spectrum of what that means. Because wholeness, thank you so much for tuning in, Luke. So wholeness is a spectrum. It's all of it. And when we talk about capacity and our ability to hold and our ability to be part of that larger picture, we learn how to hold that beyond duality, which is like this flip-flopping, right? That's this part of myself I don't like, but this part I do, right? That's conditional. The spiritual path is moving towards unconditional love for the self, for others, for existence. So as long as we are judging, and separating ourselves between what we like and don't like about ourselves, we can't step into our wholeness. So month 3 is we're setting that space for learning how, and here I'm going to use a Taoist principle, but if we look at the yin and yang, the deeper we go into the dark, eventually we come out into the light. And so it's this same idea that as we go into the depths of our shadow, those parts of us that are in bondage, that are in patterns, that are still, living out old traumas, we all have this. This is a mechanism of the mind, and we start to find that those are actually pointing us towards our purpose and our power and our compassion and our capacity to love, opening that more and more. So it's through that we actually come to understand our unbridled radiance. And that's why I call it unbridled. We're taking off we're untying those knots, right, so to speak, and coming into that ability to be more natural. We can have this concept of freedom that is, I think sometimes we get turned off by the idea of the spiritual path because it's like, oh, well, that's going to enlightenment. But what is enlightenment? We can think of it as this lofty thing. And by the way, I'm not there. I am no guru. I'm not even going to pretend. I'm a mystic. And I love playing with these principles and ideas and using them as a format to guide my own journey. So in my process as a spiritual practitioner in the realms of Tantra specifically, and yoga and Taoism, enlightenment means to become lighter because we're all carrying so many burdens. Freedom means to not be bound by our own self-limiting beliefs, by our own patterns, by our own, mindsets. So really all we're doing is we're heading towards liberation, and enlightenment is we're untangling these knots and we're lightening our load so that we can become what we already are, so that we can become more natural. Okay? So, namaste, welcome. I'm just reading this comment. Loving Tantra. Tantra is essential. I agree. Flow and gratitude, living and loving. Yes, absolutely. Beautifully said. So that is what month 3 is about, and all of this is preparing us to meet her, to meet the goddess, because all of that is the goddess. That's her play, that's her Leela. And so in month 4, we come face to face with Shakti, and we come face to face with Shakti in the traditional lens of Tantra, and we're even going to have an opportunity to work with her very intimately because we can't do it ourselves. It's a paradox. We have to do it ourselves and we can't do it ourselves. So we don't use her. We create a relationship with her so that we can realize ourselves as her, so that we can connect with everything that she is in a very real way, and so that we feel like all of existence has our back. How do we move in the world when we feel like all of existence has our back? And again, this is a practice. This is something to reorient to again and again and again, because we won't always feel that authentically. But when we have a relationship with Ma, we can then say, Ma, help. Ma, show me the way. This is what prayer is. Prayer is not, can I have this? Can I have that? Prayer is, show me the way. Help me to lighten this load. Help me to know my true nature. So in month 4, we are getting to know Shakti intimately so that we can have that relationship in our lives, whatever that looks like for us. And what's really fun about Temple of Shakti is we're going to look at many different faces, and we're going to find the face that really speaks to you. Right? And in the traditional system, this is also how it works. And I think that's so beautiful, because God shouldn't be, one size fits all, because we're all so unique, and it's going to be a different, maybe some of us want to take a boat, some of us want to take a plane, some of us want to, walk. We all have a different way we want to get there, and these different faces of the goddess are just like that. They're a different method to get there, and it must speak to us. So from there, in the Shakta traditions of, sorry, my nose is like tickling. In the Shakta traditions of Tantra, we see Shakti. Shakti is everything that's manifest. So even our 5 senses are all leading us, guiding us to that inner seat of awareness that is eternal, that is unwavering in spite of everything external. And this is where we find our peace. So while this is not separate from Shakti in the bigger sense, in month 5 we are meeting Shiva, and we're meeting him very deeply. And he is that consciousness. And so we're going to be playing with the principles of compassion and dispassion, and how both of those are so important, that we in Shakti really feel the interconnection of everything and how our actions affect that web. It's like when we pull on this string, it's going to ripple out throughout the whole web of creation. And what does compassion look like when we realize that, right? with Shiva, we're going to be working on dispassion, which I feel like, especially for us women who are very passionate, can actually be a really important thing to work on, where we are no longer getting so pulled here and there by our external dramas, by what's happening in our life, by our own emotions. And it's not that we're negating them. We've already gone through a whole process in Temple of Shakti at this point to be able to integrate them, to use them as teachers and guides on the journey. But it's also important that we have dispassion, and dispassion is this ability to sit back from all that and remain in the center. And in that center, we can take the more balanced gaze. We can move more harmoniously, right? We're not making choices. We might be feeling those emotions, honoring those emotions, but we're not then making the choice based upon those, right? In moving forward. So it's really important. And we're also... Well, I don't like to limit Shiva and Shakti to gender because they're so much bigger than that. We are going to be working on healing our relationship with the mother and the father, because I feel like this is imperative in our journey of wholeness and healing, because that's where it all started, right? So from there, we're getting to where we are today, what I'm sharing today. This is the whole journey and context that we're going on in Temple of Shakti to arrive at Dharma, the final module. And this is where we take everything we've learned and we look at how to start to integrate that into our work, whether you are a bikini waxer or a spiritual leader. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we do in this life. It doesn't matter what our relationships look like, whether we're single or in a relationship or in a triad or whatever it looks like. It doesn't matter. We can take all of these principles into every aspect of our life. And we are going to be focusing on, in Dharma, in our final module, what is our unique gift to offer into the world? And how do we do that in a way that's in alignment with that Dharma, with everything else we've now acquired and gestated through? How do we then offer ourselves as that flower at the divine's feet in this world? How do we bring, what do ethics look like in a spiritual business? What do spiritual principles look like in our everyday, if you have a 9-to-5 corporate job, how can that come into that atmosphere, right? And this is what's going to change our world, is bringing that idea of Dharma into our everyday lives. So I am just so thrilled. I really, every part of this journey was cultivated through my own personal journey, through years of doing this work and working with students and other seekers like myself, and really starting to distill and create, Temple of Shakti is my greatest work yet. We ran the first round last year and it was just incredible. And then along with all of that, so that's kind of the deeper internal journey, and there are a lot of tools that go with that. But one of the unique pieces about this mentorship program is that I am all about embodiment. I am all about the bringing in those feminine principles onto our spiritual path. And so not only are we going to have these very deep kind of priestess circles where we're really going in and exploring these themes and doing this work, but we are also going to have 3 class series that are part of Temple of Shakti. So we're going to dive deep into the Taoist feminine arts with the 6 class series, and this works specifically with our sexual energy. You're going to have a whole practice that comes with you after that can be done daily as something to anchor in, because our practice is how we keep going after the container closes. The container provides accountability, it provides sisterhood, it provides all of that. But Dharma, our finally module, is like, okay, now how do we move out into the world? And you're going to have so many tools to move forward with after this program. So you're going to have daily practices to work with. So we have the 6 class Jade Temple Taoist Feminine Art series. which is one of my signature. I've had hundreds of women initiate into these arts with me over the years, many of whom are leaders and are sharing this work as well nowadays. We have a 6-week Shakti Temple dance series where we get to really get in our bodies and explore dance as an offering and really start to bring that merging between consciousness and our body. Like, that's the beautiful thing about dance, is it does that so well. So we have 6 classes of Shakti Temple dance, and then we end with the Tantra Yoga series, which is all about that balancing of our lunar and solar natures and coming into that wholeness. And we're going to use very traditional yogic techniques to do that, but also with this sweet feminine container within our process and practice of yoga. So before I close, I just want to say that today is not the last day to register. Sunday is the last day to register for Temple of Shakti. We're starting on Monday morning at 11 a.m. PST. So today I am offering a bonus where if you sign up today, you actually will also receive the Jade Temple Online Initiation. It's now an evergreen course. This was one of my most popular courses over the years. So that will be a practice companion along with the live 6-month journey of Temple of Shakti. That is available today only. So if you register today, you will get that as well. That's a $400 value, and it's honestly priceless. I've had so many students that just, that course again and again and again comes out with golden reviews. So that is available to you today if you register. I also want to share that for those of you who are feeling the call and you really want to go deep, 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 maybe you're at a choice point in your life where something needs to change, or something already has changed, or you're really just calling in that super, super support, there is an option. Well, there's 3 options when you register for Temple of Shakti. There's just a one-time full payment that includes the full program. There is a payment plan option, so if it's easier for you to make monthly payments, that is available. And then there is a bonus that includes a private session with me alongside each one of those months. So you get one session with me each month. And that can be really powerful because this is a group mentorship. So as much as I can, I do give individual attention. I'm always available for that because I take being a teacher and people placing their trust in me as a space holder very seriously. But there's only so much I can do with a group. So if you really feel like you could use that one-on-one attention, that is also available on the landing page as a checkout option to have that extra accountability with a private session with me where we can really work on your specific constellation within all of these themes. And what else is there? I have to look at my notes. So I want to just touch on a couple things since this is going to be the last live before we start Temple of Shakti, and then I'm going to be kind of busy. So I'll try to keep doing lives here and there, but it won't be as often. So oftentimes, I'm in right now in conversation with many of you. Some of you might be here with me right now about this and, the hesitations that can come before we commit to something. And I know that because I've had it before every program, every commitment, even in traveling, there is this moment of like, is this the right thing? Does this make sense? So I do offer a 15-minute discovery call for that. I'd love for you to reach out to me directly if you want to talk with me about that and have that mirror, that help to decide if this is the good time for you or if this is right for you. And I also want to just speak to 2 of the main factors that I feel like cause that hesitation. And those are time and money. Will I have the time? Can I afford this? Like, is this a wise investment for myself? And these are personal questions. I can't necessarily answer those for you, but what I can say from my own experience is these are value systems. What we offer our time. Time equates to presence to me, right? So time is like presence. What we offer our presence to is showing what we value. So if everything I just shared about is something that you value, I trust you can make the time to show up for it in that way. And one of the beautiful things about this container is that we have the accountability of the group. And I am, of course, doing my best to hold that space of accountability by having those 2 monthly calls, by having the weekly class series, and having a virtual temple where all of that is available to you to go back over. You're going to get almost, by the time it's done, it's going to be almost 200 pages of a sacred manual that comes along with this whole program. So there's a lot of tools and resources. You do have to show up for it. That part I can't do for you, but all you have to do is show up. And what I've noticed as a practitioner for many years, even to start a practice, there can be that part of you that's like this like kind of inner hump you have to get over. But once you show up, you do it, right? Sometimes all you have to do, like let's say it's a yoga practice, you just show up on the mat and then the practice happens. But getting to the mat can be the hardest part. But that's why taking a class can be so helpful. You just show up to the class and then it happens, right? So as long as you show up, the container is there for you. So that's what I would say about time. If you value something, you'll show up for it, right? As far as money, I like to equate money is just energy. It's a currency for, again, what we value. We show what we value in our time and attention and in our investment, whether that's an energetic investment or a financial investment, which in a lot of ways is one and the same. So how much, what is the value of what this course is offering to you, the transformation that is possible here? What is the value of being held in a group of sisters in accountability for all of these pieces and for your own transformation? This course, it's hard for me to tell you. I know a lot of coaches and teachers and stuff will be like, this is the exact transformation you're going to get. This program is so personal that it's hard for me to say. I can't guarantee you what's going to happen, but I can guarantee you something big will happen. There's no way to deny that. This is work that I've brought through because it's completely transformed my life, my journey, gathering these tools, studying these tools. I have invested over and over and over again, and I've never once regretted it. When I look back, I'm like, have I ever regretted any of those investments of my time or money or energy? I haven't at all. And everything I've invested in has come into this program. So I highly doubt that there would be a regret in making that investment. So I just want to share that. This has to be from the heart. You have to feel in your heart like this is for me. If you keep going to the website, if you keep showing up on these lives, if you keep reading it, listen to your heart, and maybe it's time to take that leap, right? This is really, I sent this out in an email earlier today. We have been conditioned to operate almost exclusively from our minds and not from our wisdom mind, right? Our mind has different levels of capacity as well, but we've been taught to operate from this like part that kind of dissects everything and makes things really, really complicated. And at the end of the day, yes, we want to use our practicality. We don't want to put ourselves in a bad position by investing in something financially, if, this kind of thing. But we also want to start listening to our hearts more and more, because this is what's going to change our own lives and the planet, because our heart can be so clear and so simple, and it doesn't, dissect and weigh all these things in this way. So this is really this decision that I can't make for you, but I'm here, and I would love it if you joined us, especially if you do feel that pull in your heart. So I just invite you to get quiet and be with your heart and listen to that clear sound. And the way I like to refer to it is this ringing of the temple bell. Like when something is just a yes, when something rings of truth or rings of alignment, there's this feeling we get in our body that's just like, it's so clear. And it really, for me, it feels like that. It's almost like you ring a bell and it just reverberates throughout the body. And when I experience that, there's no denying it. And I've learned more and more to just move with that and listen to that. So if you feel something like that, I invite you to be with us. And again, if you have any like, I don't know, I would love to have a conversation with you. I'm personally not so into marketing tactics and all of that. So I'd like to have like a real conversation with you about that and whether this is a good time or the right decision for you. So this is pretty much, one last thing I want to cover before I close is who is this for? And there's a broad spectrum of who this program is for. So I would say this is for women who are really connected to that inner mystic, and you just want to go deeper and deeper, and you understand that the path is a spiral and it just goes and goes and goes, and you understand the power of women coming together in circle. Even through the online format, I 1000% prefer in person, but I've found immense power even in an online format. And especially, I think one of the most powerful things about it is that when we come in from all these different locations on the planet, I think of it as like acupuncture points of anchoring this work in these different places. And I think that's so beautiful and so powerful. And our practice, our work really amplifies in circle. This is how the priestesses of old worked. It wasn't a solo journey. It wasn't a solo mission. We each have our part to play. We each have our piece to transform and transmute and liberate. But we do it with that container of the circle and with those mirrors that provides. So this is very much for the modern mystic. On a more practical level, this is for women who are looking for a transformation, who know there's something more to life and they're ready to claim that and move into that, to feel more at home in their own skin or your own skin, to just bring the sacred more into everyday life, to have that anchor and orientation like we talked about here with Dharma, the concept of Dharma. This is for yoga teachers who want to bring in more of a feminine, not only more of a feminine approach, but also a more traditional alignment, because I think there is a big movement at this time to really honor the traditions that these practices that have changed our lives come from, right? And so this is true of yoga. This program would also be amazing for Tantra teachers. If you are a teacher of Neo-Tantra or Western Tantra, where you're working with relationship and intimacy and sex and sexuality, this would be an incredible program to get a deeper basis in the traditional context of Tantra and to be able to provide that as well in your work and have that as a foundation. Powerful for your future acupuncture practice. It would, and you would love, acupuncture comes out of traditional Chinese medicine, which is connected to the Taoist system, and we are going to go into how the Taoist system, and we're even going into a whole process and practice of working with the 5 elements in the organs. So this would be incredibly powerful for that and could provide tools to share with your clients for how to work internally outside of your sessions, which I always feel like the follow-up and the integration is so important. So that's really, this is kind of my passion, is, like I said at the very beginning, some of you might not have caught it, but it's this bridging between East and West and how we can do this in alignment with Dharma and ethics and, not misappropriating things, but truly understanding, but then building upon those foundations, right, in a good way. So this program would be amazing for those of you who are interested in that intersection. And again, the systems that we are working with are the yogic system, the Taoist system, the tantric system, most specifically. That's going to be kind of our biggest overarching system. And then also in our temple dance classes, we're going to be looking at the tradition of the dancing priestesses that were in the temples. So my work, Shakti Temple Arts, is very much an umbrella for these different traditions that held these feminine embodied, what I like to call temple arts, where there were priestesses who were serving in this way, where the spiritual traditions did not lose the feminine embodied approach, because so many of the systems ended up getting translated through a man's body. So we get to enter into the traditional systems, but the ones that really kept this this feminine lens and this feminine approach intact. Okay? So I think I've shared plenty. Again, this is the very last live of this series. Today there is a bonus that if you sign up today, you will also get the Jade Temple Online Initiation, which will be an amazing support when we get into the Jade Temple series, because you'll have a bunch of the resources there with you. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you to those of you who've been tuning in for several of these lives. It means the world to me. I do this for you, for all of our upliftment and remembrance, and it just feels so good to connect in this way. So Temple of Shakti registrations closing Sunday night. You can look at all the details at the link in my bio. It should be the top link. Everything is there for you. Reach out to me directly. I'm pretty much going to be available throughout this whole weekend to answer any questions you have a conversation with you if that's necessary. So just know I'm here. Reach out to me. Let's talk. And we start with we have an already incredible and diverse group of women from around the world that's already come together, and I look forward to welcoming more of you as you come in the door, and we meet at 11 a.m. on Monday. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for the blessings. You also have a great weekend, and maybe I will see some of you on Monday. All right, my loves. Mwah. Ciao. Happy Devi Venus Friday.